Welcome to the Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. URB-E is a compact container delivery network that is transforming the last mile delivery process. From the mind of former Porsche and Fisker engineers, these electric vehicles and collapsible containers are economizing retail delivery operations from carbon footprints to traffic. And now, since partnering with PenguinPickUp, they're introducing a customer-oriented, entirely new modality for delivery here in Canada. On this episode of the Voice of Retail podcast, I sit down with Charles Jolley, the CEO of URB-E, to talk about how the company is reimagining package delivery. URB-E was ready for the e-commerce boom long before the pandemic sent consumers online. Charles sheds light on how the company has kept up with rapid growth and what they've learned from offering solutions for delivery in high-density environments. In 18 months of COVID-era supply chain and delivery service complications, the promise of URB-E's design is a refreshing look at the innovative adaptations that lay ahead.
The key thing about them is they're designed to be small, to operate in much more compact environments. So you can fit actually, for example, the bike and the trailer fold up so you can fit 6 of them into a parking spot.
Charles, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing this morning?
Thank you for having me. Very well. Thanks.
Perfect. Now, where am I reaching you today?
Oh, well, as it turns out, I'm down in the Caribbean enjoying some depression passing over me. So I'm watching a nice downpour of rain at the moment.
Well, it sounds like
take a little break just before the holiday rush takes off, though. This is our last chance.
Right on the peak. And I'm sure you've been busy and we're going to talk about that. You're doing some really exciting stuff. So thanks for taking time out of your vacation, basically. To talk about
sure.
All right. Well, let's start at the beginning. Tell me about yourself, your background, and your role at URB-E.
Yeah. So, my background, I've spent most of my career in Silicon Valley. I built a few tech companies, spent some time at Apple and Facebook. I was really lucky to be there at Apple in particular when we launched both the iPhone and iPad, and I helped do the internet services part of it. So that was pretty interesting. Got to see a lot of what it's like to introduce kind of new platforms and technologies that can really have a big change on the way we live. And I guess I would say I've been kind of chasing that the rest of my career. So that's kind of how I ended up at Facebook. And, then ended up meeting the founders of URB-E a few years ago. And I started out as an investor, actually got to know the team quite a bit. And, they'd been interesting. They were working on this pretty interesting problem, which at the time in 2019, only a few people were really thinking about, some of the biggest retailers, which was around, how are we going to solve delivery when it becomes a really, really big scale problem? Not just like we thought there were a lot of deliveries happening in 2019, right? But of course, it's nothing in comparison to what we've experienced after COVID.
Yeah.
And, there are a few companies working on it. And then last year, I would say it became a problem that almost every retailer is trying to solve now. And because they'd been dealing with this for a long time, and the founders are from Porsche and Fisker and have spent a lot of time designing really high performance vehicles and thinking about electrification, I felt like we had a really compelling solution. So they asked me to join last year as a CEO, and I was excited to join them. So we've been at this now together as a team for the last year, and we're deployed in New York and getting ready to, launching in Toronto and spreading out across North America.
Yeah, that's exciting. And that's what brought us together. This podcast is, we're recording before your official launch, but by the time we play it, you will have launched. So there'll be hopefully a bit of news. Now, tell me about, so first of all, so URB-E's been along how long before you became involved? How long have they been working on this problem before they brought you on?
Well, URB-E started in 2015, and the original idea was actually this really cool little foldable scooter that they designed for commuters to get back and forth. And I would say the interest of Peter and Sven, the founders, had always been around what comes after the car. Are we going to do something different than these giant, 2 to 4 ton vehicles? When you switch to electric, there's a lot of challenges actually with reproducing the way a car is made today. If you just want to do the exact same thing with electrical, can we do something a little bit smarter? And, they weren't the only ones thinking about this, right? Scooters came along. Scooters became a really big thing in 2015, 2016. You had Lime and others come out. But they designed something really new. And then they ended up getting approached by UPS and then a few others. And they said, hey, we like these scooters. We want to see if we can do this to come up with something that is, more applicable for delivery. And I would say one of their big wins early on was that they were able to design a system for UPS where they could replace with these very small scooters and a wagon and trailer system, and they had a special system for carrying parcels. They could replace 4 big brown trucks with 5 of these tiny little scooters that used, 96% less carbon and are much, much smaller, could go right up to your doorstep and do a quick drop off. And so delivered really great experience for customers. And that was really where we got started.
Well, it's a great segue to my kind of broader question about what problem you're trying to solve, because on the the most obvious problem is last mile delivery, and of course we've had this great acceleration here in Canada. We've probably moved forward 5 years. We're catching up a little bit, and in the States you probably moved ahead 2 years. But that was inevitable. That was coming anyway, right? E-commerce was growing double digit in the before time, and it's probably going to grow double digit again after the COVID era, whenever that is, or whatever that looks like. But there's a broader issue, right? Like you mentioned New York. It's actually been one of the longest times in my life. I haven't been to New York City, but I'm based in Toronto, so New York City was like
not far.
No, it's a quick commuter flight for me. And I used to marvel. And I remember I was watching all these UPS trucks and the different trucks, and I'm thinking, my God, what a great revenue source for the city, because they're all being ticketed. I think there's hundreds of thousands of dollars a day, and the density and parcels all over the sidewalk. It was like a mess. And then there's people who are now thinking about the sustainability element of everything they do. I think we're all thinking a bit more yesterday. I mean, my goodness, the UN put out a report yesterday saying we've got a big problem for the next 30 years, and we'll have a bigger problem if we don't do something about it. Is there a bigger problem that you set out to solve other than kind of, the important problem of last mile delivery for retailers?
Well, I think the really great opportunity is that, look, the first thing you want to solve for is the carbon footprint, also the traffic footprint. Like you mentioned, you go into these cities and, what you experience in New York, it's coming to a city near you, right?
Yeah,
where we just have such a huge increase in demand and packages that it's really breaking the systems. But I think, so that's kind of, I would say people come for the carbon savings, but they stay for the containers, which is actually where I think the big opportunity is, because if you're going to have the chance to, it's been, decades since we've had a chance to introduce an entirely new modality for delivery. And if we get to rethink this from scratch, we've thought that there's an opportunity here to build something that has a much higher headroom than just having an electric truck.
Right.
So what our system is designed to do, we have the electric vehicle itself, which we can get into, but we also have these small, what we call micro containers. And what that means is you're actually able to, instead of having a truck pull up and let's say spend 45 minutes loading in the back of your car store or whatever it might take, either loading or unloading, you could also use this to supply stores, but instead you can pack these containers separately. And then when the van pulls up or the vehicle pulls up, you just load it and go. It's like a pit stop, right?
Yeah.
And that seems really simple, but containers seemed really simple when they were introduced into shipping, and they completely transformed the entire industry.
Yeah.
And it's not just the containers, but it's all the infrastructure you build around it. So imagine being able to create entirely different containers that are maybe an entirely mobile store. So you could have a store with all of the, you could have a container with all of the goods that you think customers might need out on the street and 10 minutes away from your nearest, from somebody when they want to order, as an example. Or you can design networks or live supply chains where you can get supplies, in real time moving across the city much more efficiently. So that's really what we're excited about. We think that 95% lower carbon footprint, 6 times lower traffic impact, that's really important. And that's what's driving a lot of the adoption right now. But the containerization that we're building on top of it, that's really where I think of this as a potential to really drastically change the way retail operates within a city in the future. That's what we're most excited about.
Well, sure. And it's one of those things that visualizing, and I'm going to put a link into your website because you've got some nice visualizations, but the visuals are really compelling because it's really a 3-part system the way I look at it, right? You've got your what looks like a bike, a powered bike, you've got a trailer, and then you've got these large rectangular, what you call the containers. And what I marveled at just watching it for a little bit is how individuals can just load up this container, and it holds an amazing amount of weight, right? We're not talking a small bit of weight here. What
800 pounds.
800 pounds or 400, it's just almost 400 kilos. And then the individuals can roll it onto the trailer and then attach it to this bike and just move around. And I was marveling at how easily it was that they were moving around. Is that the genius of the mechanics or the engineering, this 3-part system that works together? Yeah.
Yeah, you got it. I'm like that you saw the parts, the modularity of it, because that I think is one of the most important parts. Every city that you operate in is a little bit different. And so the idea behind our system is we have a vehicle platform, which consists of some kind of motorized vehicle. It could be a bike. We have a 2-wheel version. We have a 4-wheel version we're working on. Then you have the trailer that can actually hold all of these containers. And, both of those, the key thing about them is they're designed to be small, to operate in, much more compact environments. So you can fit actually, for example, the bike and the trailer fold up. So you can fit 6 of them into a parking spot, which means that you can store a whole fleet of them behind a store. Right. So there's some things about them because the kind of magic of this is that we designed these vehicles as what we call a local delivery network. So we imagine a future where every neighborhood will have their own set of fleet of vehicles that can move containers around. They don't have to go on the highway, which is why we can make them so small and efficient. Yeah. And then you use these containers that, like you said, they're really easy to load them and unload them. One person can roll them on and off. Yeah. We have the trailers will actually kneel down. So it's really easy to just roll them on and off. And when you don't use them, they also fold up. So you can fit 24 of those into a parking spot. Wow. So, very, very compact and then easy to just unpack. And because it's modular, we can tune it for each different city. So, for example, the vehicles we've launched with PenguinPickUp, they're also a bike and a trailer system. Which is the best fit for Toronto because there's a lot of bike lanes and existing infrastructure we can use, but they're slightly tuned differently to fit Canadian legal requirements to make sure that they run at a safe speed. We don't allow them to go too fast, so we have a lot of safety features on it. So I think that modular system, and then the fact that you can pack them up, keep them close to where all of your retail is, and then it's easy for people to just plug and play and basically go. That's really the secret sauce that makes this really efficient for people.
So two follow-up questions on that, just about the logistics so my listeners kind of understand. So first of all, you're operating in New York City, so New York gets a bit of snow like Toronto does. So let's talk about that. And then the second is, what's the kind of delivery perimeter? Like where can it go? Where is it optimized? So how far out? What's the perimeter? So talk about the weather. How do you account for the weather? And then what's the optimal kind of, not route density, so to speak, but how far out from your central depot, wherever that may be, is optimal for the solution?
Yeah. So, surprising, it was actually surprised us a bit. We thought we would need to build a lot more. We're working on more weatherproofing to make an environment that's a little easier for the riders. But we've actually found Canada is one of the largest adopters outside of Europe of bike cargo systems. I think Canada just in general is very, focused on driving that sort of green initiative and transforming your cities compared to a lot of other places in North America in particular. And so there's just a tremendous amount of interest, and people, basically bundle up, I think is how they'll do it in the wintertime. And then we're working on, you can actually put some safety and weatherproofing around it, windshields and other things that we're actually actively developing right now for the Canadian market that will make it a lot easier for riders. I would say
winter tires on the trailer.
Well, that's one thing I was going to say is we do design the trailers and the bike though for safety, and so they have. You'll notice our bike wheels. They're really wide. They actually are motorcycle wheels, and then or moped wheels. And same thing on the rear trailers. We've designed it with a very low center of gravity, so it's designed specifically for working in really bad inclement weather and still maintaining a lot of tread. And actually, even the design of our bike, which is no one else on the market's really built something like this. It's what's called a mid-drive motor. So we have a motor in the middle and a gearing system that goes to the back, and then a specialized automatic transmission we've actually developed for the back, or hub rather, that is able to really handle transferring lots and lots of weight while keeping the bike stable on the ground, even in the snow. And typically you'll go around maybe 2 or 3 kilometers from the center. That's about the range that people will go. Although it's a swappable battery and you could take it, easily 9, 10, 20 during a day if you wanted to.
Yeah. Well, if I think of another Canadian city that's actually ahead of Toronto, I think of Montreal, which is very bike focused, way more actually so than Toronto. But of course, they get real weather, not just New York or Toronto winters. They get real weather.
That's right,
so.
And they've made the bikes work there, so we're just kind of coasting along, I would say, in their trails.
Right. Well, you mentioned PenguinPickUp. So great, exciting news. You've done a business deal with PenguinPickUp. Talk about that and talk about how that came about and how they chose you and give us some insight.
Well, PenguinPickUp is, I think one of the things that's really special about them as a delivery company is they've really focused a lot on the consumer experience. That's always been one of their main points of differentiation, right? They have all these stores. It's easy for you to come in and pick things up and get what you want when you want it instead of having to coordinate.
Savvy.
And, now I think they got in touch with us a few months ago and were saying, hey, we've been doing this store pickup for a while. And now we have a lot of customers that would like to have some of the packages go straight to them. And there's a lot of partners that they have that would like to do this. But we want to do it in a way that's really efficient and good for the community and also really efficient for us. And I think the fact that we were able to deliver on all of those criteria and do it in a way that's very safe and proven to work in a city like Toronto, which is fairly similar to New York in certain key ways, is a big reason we end up working together. I really have enjoyed working with them because, like I said, kind of my background, I guess, I just have a real passion for creating products and experiences that are going to make consumers really happy. And, I've really enjoyed working with PenguinPickUp's team because they have that very similar view on the world. For sure.
And they're very savvy. They've been doing it a long time. They've been doing, I knew the folks who created PenguinPickUp, and they're very, very good at what they do. So it's a real testament that they would choose you as a partner because they know what they're doing very well. So congratulations on that. And talk about the operating costs a little bit. So you've talked about, modular, you talked about storage, which clearly you've, as an organization, thought well about how to store. You pretty much thought through every part. But from an operating cost perspective, you've got the human component, then you've got the cost. Is it comparable to other solutions? How do you think about that? And how do you position that with retail partners and folks like PenguinPickUp?
Well, our general goal is that if you are just going to basically swap a truck or van with one of our vehicles, which you can do because we can carry 800 pounds or 400 kilos of cargo, as you mentioned, which is really as much as typically ends up in any truck or van that you see driving around the city doing the last mile. So it's really a one-for-one replacement. The cost should be basically comparable. One thing that we do that makes just that model better is we actually offer our system fully turnkey. So customers are able to essentially pay us a fully managed fleet rate or a lease rate, and it's kind of fleet as a service. So they don't have to put all of this onto their balance sheet or go, learn how to train their team to manage it. We can even provide storage and daily routine maintenance and everything. And one reason we like doing it that way is because we still control the vehicles, we can continually improve them. So just you get kind of on this train with us, we're going to be getting a better improvement. If you go into the full containerization, which requires a lot more changes on the company side, right? Like then you're typically having to implement some changes inside your warehouse, for example, in the way you pack things. But if you go into full containerization, we can almost double the efficiency, actually more than double the efficiency of most deliveries, or, cut the cost in up to half, which is a really, really big savings. And the real reason for that is you typically look at your typical time spent with a delivery driver, which is the most expensive part of a last mile, is the driver's time. Almost 40% of that will usually be spent loading their truck, reorganizing their truck, all of the time just spent managing the truck. And so because we're able to replace that with this really quick, 5-minute load and go, it just immediately offers you a massive improvement in efficiency and lowers your cost dramatically.
Well, I love the visual. As soon as I looked at it, I was imagining, because I talk a lot about on my various podcasts, the strategy around hybridization of retailers as I do with Steve Dennis. And what we talk about is using stores as your distribution center, and there's more of that.
Yes.
So this is a great solution for that. I mean, there's one thing to ship from a central DC and the mechanics of that, as you say, great efficiency, but as a solution to ship from store. And
yes.
To me, it was really interesting. Now, you've been there a year. The organization's been around for a while. What lessons have you learned? I mean, you're now operating at more scale. You've got the great acceleration, driving volumes, probably more than you anticipated in a short amount of time. Any lessons learned, modifications you've made, approaches that are different at the doorstep or anywhere else? Anything you've done and changed that's different than a year or 18 months ago?
Gosh, I think the main thing we've learned is that how much the value of a product like this is in the integration of all of the parts. There was a major e-commerce company. Their fleet buyer said something to me once that really stuck with me. He said, we love to replace vans, but the reason we can't so easily is because when you buy a van, you don't just get the van, you get fueling stations, and you get repair centers and supply chains and trained drivers and insurance and roads, and there's just all of this infrastructure that you inherit when you pay that $40,000 or whatever for a van. And if you're going to introduce a new vehicle class, it's one thing to build the vehicle and make it actually work, which is, by the way, a lot of work, right? Yeah. I mean, not very many people in the world can do it.
Yeah.
There's only probably 4 or 5 today that have vehicles that can even meet these criteria. Yeah. But then you also need to make it so that people can actually deploy it. And so that's really where we evolved to this business model, where we think of everything we do as an integrated whole, from supply chain to the servicing to storage, and the way everything has to fold up and sit in the back of a retail store. And there's software that connects all of this together, so you can get real-time visibility on where your cargo is as it makes its way to the customer. All of those pieces have to integrate together, and so it's hard. There's a lot of work you have to do before you have a product that is. That's one reason I think people have been talking about this for so long, and you've been hearing about this stuff for years and years. I think one of the big bottlenecks is there's just a lot of baseline infrastructure and system components that we have to build before this is a practical product to use at scale in the market. And probably, I think URB now is one of maybe 2 in the US that can do this right now. And there's some over in Germany that have approached some of that, but it's hard to get things over here because of COVID. So we're really in a unique space where, people that are trying to solve this problem today, URB is I would say, I think, probably the leading contender to do that here in our continent, let's say.
Right on. Well, what's next for URB? I mean, the what next for URB question is funny because there's been a lot going on in your life. You just launched in Toronto, and you're here in Canada. What's next for the organization? And kind of follow up question: if listeners want to learn more, where do they go and how do they get in touch? So first of all, what's on the roadmap, so to speak, for URB?
Yeah, so, we're getting ready for a really busy holiday season. I would say we have a lot of customers that will be rolling out with us in New York City and Toronto, and we're also setting up some service in Seattle right now and Los Angeles. So, that's keeping us really busy, just getting all of these different service areas up and running. That's really exciting. I think the next big thing we're going to be working on, one of the big things we'll be working on next year, is our actual in-store integration experience, which is probably relevant for your listeners. And you mentioned that being able to bring stores, use stores as actual forward deployment hubs. That's something that we think a lot about too. And so one thing we've been developing is some software that would allow you to, for example, what we want you to do is to have a container in the back of your store. It can be folded up when it's not in use, so it doesn't take up space. You can open it up, basically put orders into that as you go, and you scan the order, scan the container. When the container's full, someone can pick it up and take it and do the delivery. And so we think it's going to ultimately be once we have this and fully deployed as a software system, it's going to really make it possible for a lot of these retail stores to convert their back of store into an actual deployment hub where they can offer, a lot of really fast instant delivery and other great features to their customers.
Well, interesting. So hold on that point though. I want to dig a bit deeper. So you've got your software going, you've got the container is loaded. So a driver gets dropped off, like the human person.
A driver comes by. So the idea being that there should be basically shared vehicles out there, so we can have delivery partner with the vehicles and the driver. So if you're a store, you don't have to go worry about, maybe it's PenguinPickUp, right? Or someone like them. So if you're a store, and I'm not announcing that with them, just to be clear, but as an example of the type of partner we would work with. So if you're a store, and you want to offer same day delivery, you want to offer, maybe new types of services that you can dispatch out of your retail. You can basically just have the container in the back, use our software to load it up with orders, and then, press a button and a delivery partner will come by, pick it up and take it away for you. That's really the vision we're driving towards.
That's really interesting because you could be a retailer located in downtown, for now, Toronto, LA, or New York, and take a bunch of orders all day. And then whenever you reach that optimal, a driver, basically, someone who's going to move that, comes and starts to deliver in that 2 kilometer or the 2 mile area. Am I getting that right?
You got it exactly right. Yeah. And you could, and the cool thing, this is why we love containers so much, because we're really just scratching the surface of what you can do with this new type of platform. You could imagine having containers that are set at different delivery time windows. So 2 hours or same day.
Or next day, right? Next day. You spend the day loading it up but yet you can deliver next day.
Exactly. And that can get dropped off. We're already operating in New York, these what we call staging locations, where people will pack containers from other boroughs, let's say Brooklyn, and those will get dropped off in the morning at the staging location, and then drivers will take them around and deliver them during the day in Manhattan.
Interesting. So interesting. All right. And it's been a great conversation. I love your system. So tell me about where the listeners can go to learn more and get in touch.
Yeah, so you can go to our website, URB.com. That's URB-E.com. And there's a contact form, and get in touch with us. We'll be happy to share a lot more information. We have a lot of videos and actual concrete technical information, and we can, maybe even arrange to show a demo. We love showing it off. It's the best thing to do is to see it in person. We'll also be at Home Delivery World in Philadelphia for people that are attending that conference with the actual equipment there. So maybe you can come take a test ride.
All right. Well, very good. Well, Charles, thanks so much for joining me on The Voice of Retail. It's been great. Congratulations on your success so far. I wish you much success in the future. And thanks for joining me and telling me all about your system.
Thanks for having me on. It's been great.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Voice of Retail. Be sure and follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy podcasts so you don't miss out on the latest episodes, industry news, and insights. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a rating review, as it really helps us grow so that we continue to get amazing guests onto the show. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, president of Emmy LeBlanc Company, Inc., and if you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website at emmyleblanc.co. Until next time, stay safe, have a great week.